You are now listening to Handsome Reads. It is always, and I mean always, a great time when we get back together. And by always, I mean at least 5 L's in the spelling of the word. Welcome back, esteemed guests, to another episode of Handsome Reads, where your host, �絵𝐿𝐒 Obasi, takes you through a world of original literary content. Today, we continue with our series Army of Sin with an episode titled A Slice of Heaven. Before we begin, however, I would like to encourage you, if you have not yet done so, to like and subscribe to the Spotify podcast, follow me on Instagram, and you can also find video episodes on YouTube at Handsome Reads, all common letters. A share a day goes a long way. So if the end of this episode finds you in a state of enjoyment, feel free to post to your own social media platforms. Now, I invite you to step through the portal as I transport us back into the thick of it. This episode is located in the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Looks like rain. Wrand's voice carried over the broken reception of the radio station. Liam grunted in response, hand absently stroking through Aya's hair as she lay across the back seat. The trio had been on the road for a little over 2 hours. Aya had knocked out midway through the drive, but not before squeezing the back of Wrand's neck before clambering onto the back seat to fold her tall frame into some form of comfortable position. Liam's thighs, the pillow. Liam would not sleep, not while his brother drove, eyes far off, mind deep within whatever daydream held him hostage. Yet, at the sudden sound of Wrand's voice, he was there for his brother. Wrand rolled his stiff shoulders as their rental continued to gobble up what was left of the asphalt roads. He was so engrossed in the task at hand, avoiding the ever-prevalent sinkholes that littered the countryside. This was one of the few places his mind was not distracted. Behind the steering wheel, with the slap of the wind in his face, offering a sobriety from the pull of one named Kaya Alexis. As he passed familiar landmark after landmark, his face creased into a smile at the memories of running across these expanses of abandoned cocoa estates. They had a knack for that, it seemed, Wrand thought in hindsight, a distinct ability to take the downtrodden and bring it back to life again. Ragamuffins! Come inside and wash up all that sweat before dinner, came the sing-song of Ma Alice, who sported her classic pose of hands on her hips, a kitchen towel thrown over one shoulder. The teenagers laughed, continuing to kick the football with wild abandon in matching outfits of badly stained white vests and short khaki pants. Liam and Wrand Martin, if I have to talk again, Ma Alice warned, before turning on her heel to stride into the house once more. What's put that dog smile on your face, bro? Liam inquired, after having caught Wrand's smile through the rearview mirror. Stepping out of the flashback, Wrand replied, Remember when Ma Alice used to call us in for dinner? Liam snorted, the jolt of amusement drawing a fussing sound from Aya as the movement disturbed her. That dreaded, "If I ever have to talk again," Rand continued, pitch going slightly higher as he pulled off a flawless imitation. Man, and the way her voice would lower when she said, "I beg your pardon?" Woman was straight up scary, Rand nodded in agreement, eyes warming up. He eased his foot off the pedal, the road now even more precarious, as they had reached the end of the asphalt. "Almost there," Liam trailed off. "Mm-hmm," came Rand's response. The smell of wet grass filled the cabin of the car as Rand rolled all 4 windows down. Breathing deeply as the fresh air swept across his face, Liam let out a satisfied exhale, finally feeling as though he were home. This expanse of land, this retired cocoa estate, was the first place he had learned what it was to be loved by anyone other than his brother, Rand. As the car slowed even more, Liam welcomed a memory of his own. "How are you today, Janice?" came a voice that reached the ears of a scraggly teenager sporting bruised knuckles as he sat partially hunched over. "Oh, Shamara, what a nice surprise!" exclaimed Janice Lincoln, head of the teens of the dearly departed home. "We weren't expecting you for another week." No matter. Are the boys ready to go?" "Well, that's why I wished you had called earlier." This time, Janice's voice held a touch of anxiety, rare for her. This visitor must be important, the teen thought to himself. The youth attempted to sit up, but that attempt was short-lived. A ripple of pain coursed through his midsection as he settled for using his foot to nudge the other teen next to him. The latter had broad shoulders, which seemed relaxed. His left eye was swollen shut while the other remained closed of its own volition, breathing evenly. Able to muster only a nod in the direction of the voices, the teen went back to his hunched position. "Same boys?" the stranger asked. "Yes." They snuck out again, came back escorted by Officer Finley once more. It was Finn who called Alice around 2:30 this morning. "Relax, my dear," the stranger referred to as Shamara comforted Janice in a voice growing gentle at her obvious frustration. "May I see them?" "I'll be damned if anyone else comes to look at us like some animals in a cage," a hunched, teenage version of Liam thought to himself. Pushing to his feet, teeth clenched with pain as he moved, he felt his brother stand at his side in silent support. Just the right height to support me, the taller of the 2 teenagers thought, through the haze of pain, his body refusing to get itself together. Sagging against the shoulder that was offered, the lopsided pair stood in wait, unsure of what was to come. "Oi! Earth to Liam," Rand said, snapping his fingers next to Liam's ear. "We're here, man. We'll walk the rest, stretch our legs a bit." "Sounds good," Liam agreed, scolding himself momentarily for becoming so lost down memory lane. Forgiving himself for his lapse, he stretched, a grin spreading across his face as he stared at Aya. "What?" she asked, a sleepy sulk in her tone as she wiped the last vestiges of rest from her eyes. "Nothing, girl. Just that right now you have a face only Ma could love," he ribbed. "Oof!" he exclaimed, scrambling out of the car as Aya attempted to add her fist to his chest. Angels are real. Correct is right, Aya nodded to herself as she walked ahead of the Mattern brothers. Not of the feathery variety she had once read of as a child, penlight clutched between her lips so as not to disturb her adopted sisters she shared a room with. No, these were wingless beings she was sure whoever had put this universe together had taken its time on. And I know 5 of them, she thought, the familiar feeling of her chest swelling that associated such fond thought, threatening to make her burst. The tips of her boots came away damp as they walked through the moist grass, and she could care less. She would walk this stretch, barefoot if necessary. It was true that she loved her blood relatives that had never stopped looking for her and had eventually found her at age 22. But this bond, strong enough to take her breath away with its purity, was different and separate. Her 2 brothers, Liam and Wrand, and her 3 mothers, Shamara, Alice, and Faina, were the adhesive agents that had held her mind and heart together. The soft rap of knuckles on the door came even as a wild, young heart beat against the frightened girl's ribcage. It was around the middle of the door, low in position, but authoritative, demanding a response. Who could this be? The frightened girl thought. It wasn't the boys. She knew that much. They would never have wasted time on the courtesy of a knock. Who did you tell? He hissed beneath his breath, eyes growing even more furious. A young Aya's eyes grew frantic, bouncing around the room for an escape route. Perhaps through the broken glass overlooking the kitchen sink. The skin of her back had yet to heal completely from her last attempt, but the drive for freedom was well worth it. He caught her shoulders in large, thin palms. To the couch, and not a word, he commanded, his face a mask of fury, before calling over his shoulder in the most pleasant of tones. Just a second. A young Aya's stomach grew queasy as she saw him cheerfully whistling as he strode across the large living room. He always whistled right before he did something atrocious. Such rage and violence held within his wiry frame. Her eyes met his own as he stopped right before the door handle. Not too loud, okay there? The door opened to reveal a woman that couldn't be more than 5'5", the top of her head barely reaching the man's collarbone. She was dressed in grey, baggy sweatpants and a white tank top. Her head shaven down on one side. She seemed to be no more than late 20s, resembling one of those women that visited the shelter from time to time. Former residents, Miss Janice had referred to them as. Her eyes, however, seemed much older than the creamy smoothness of her face, a tone that stood out in stark relief as all of her exposed skin was covered by an elaborate tattoo that ended in the imprint of a hand that curled around the expanse of her neck. The piercing green of her eyes stared past the man in her path, fixating on the malnourished child that tried her best to hide a limp as she made her way across the living room to what sounded like early morning television cartoons. I have come for the child, the stranger said, The young version of Aya froze mid-stride, eyes growing impossibly larger as hope bloomed in her chest. And you are, my dear? Her adopted father asked, looking at their guest above the rim of his glasses, eyes flashing hot before being replaced by something sinister. The woman didn't see the look, the little girl thought, horrified. That was the scary thing with Mr. Dennis Bims. His true side was hidden so well behind the glasses and the smile he wore. It certainly worked with everyone at the shelter. Everyone except Rand and Liam. How do I warn her? Young Aya thought. Better I save her than both of us get locked in here. My name is 𝐕𝐈𝐒, and this is my daughter, Aya, the tattooed woman replied, winking at the girl before looking over her shoulder at the man. Face flushing beneath her stare, Mr. Bims tripped over his next words. But, oh my, I was not aware she had a mother. What a pleasant surprise. It was all an act, Aya thought to herself. Go ahead to the television, child. Your mother and I shall share a word, he called. Aya stood frozen, afraid to leave the woman alone with this man. No one knew what crawled beneath his skin, the true face he hid. It is all right, child. Go ahead, Faina said softly. Go on, she repeated when Aya stood glued to her spot. The minutes ticked by, and little Aya's ears remained peeled for a piece of the adult conversation. No sound came. Before her, the images on the television never registered, her eyes far away, tears welling up. What she would give to see her brothers one last time. For one more group hug, the protective arms of both Liam and Rand blocking out the light. Who knew the darkness could be so safe? Now, she knew what was to come. As soon as he convinced this lady that she was indeed safe, Aya would receive the blame for the stranger showing up. A blame that was always physical. The tears rolled down her face as she heard his footsteps stalking down the hall towards the bedroom they both shared. Her bedroom, just a few rooms down, had only been for show, in times when a social worker came to inspect the premises. On the days and the nights when no social worker was present, Aya was forced to sleep in the same bedroom. Wipe away those tears, little one. Do not let him see your fear, Faina urged gently. Little Aya's head whipped around to see the woman still in the house. I have a message for you, from your brothers. However, I can't tell you if you don't stop crying, Faina said matter-of-factly. The little girl wiped away her silent tears, losing herself in the low tones of the woman's accented English. There you go, the woman encouraged. They sent this, holding out a torn piece of cloth in the center of her palm. The woman nodded approvingly as the little girl made as if to reach for it. The sound of footsteps echoed along the hall as Mr. Bims returned, carrying a small backpack. I still don't understand the mix-up at the shelter, he said, holding out the bag to the lady named Faina. I will have to have a word with Janice about this. Such an inconvenience. And she and I were just getting to know each other. Faina made a non-committal sound at the back of her throat as she held her hand out to the little girl. May I ask where you all will be staying? I would surely like if I could check in on her sometime. Aya's hand jerked within the older lady's at his words, the very voice goosebumping her skin. No need, Mr. Bims. We will find you, Faina promised, as she gently led Aya towards the door. Aya? He called, halting the pair as they neared the door. Give your old man a hug before you go. Aya shook her head almost imperceptibly, the torn piece of blood-stained cloth clutched in her small hand. Perhaps another time, Mr. Bims. We are pressed for time at the moment, Faina replied. Covering the icy rage by the movement of pushing his spectacles higher up on his nose bridge, Mr. Bims waved from where he stood in the center of what was once Aya's torture chamber. See you soon then, child. Faina pushed open the door, the sunlight greeting Aya's face with welcome warmth, even as her eyes squinted to adjust. It was not until the engine purred and her seatbelt fastened that she realized her brothers had kept their word. They had come for her. End of episode. Well, friends, that brings us to the end of another episode, and also a bit of a history lesson. I do hope that you enjoyed the numerous flashbacks that would have been contained within this episode, and that it provides you with some insight, some more insight as to the history, the story of not only the adopted siblings, Rand, Liam, and Aya, but also their adoptive parents, Ma Alice, Ma Shamara, and Ma Faina. Be sure to tune in next time as we learn even more about their past, as we await what comes with their future. Until next time, and as always, love and light.